Welcome to this very special edition of Geo Interview. Today we are joined by GS Madhusudan, Chief Executive Officer of InCore Semi, a trailblazing semiconductor design IP company born out of IIT Madras's RISE lab. InCore is one of the earliest success stories of semiconductors that has emerged from academic R&D and also the first to successfully commercialize India's own indigenous chip design IP, Shakti, while also being supported under government's design-linked incentives. At GEOSTRATA, we have been tracking the semiconductor story of India for almost 2 years now, and it is fascinating to see India's design ecosystem starting to take shape, and which is why this conversation is very special, personally for me as well. And who better than one of the key leaders in the field to tell us where the chip industry of India is leading, other than Madhu. So, Madhu, thank you very much. Hope you are doing great.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
Right. So I'll raise a wider contextual question here. So InCore was born out of Shakti project at IIT Madras. Can you provide us a longitudinal view of how Shakti became from being a part of an academic research program turned into a commercial deep tech startup in the future?
The Shakti program was started in 2012. I actually was an advisor to a nearby lab called SETS. Professor Kamakoti, who's now the director of IIT Madras, earlier he was the head of RISE lab, basically asked me to come over to IIT and help start the processor effort. So he basically handled the academic side, research, government funding, and I basically ran the program. The goal of the program itself was twofold. It was not meant to be initially a very deep research program. It was meant more as a see, we did not have any major processor research groups in the country, right? So even the basic research infra was missing. There was the odd professor or two doing research, but there was no full-fledged lab working on processor research. Not because of lack of capability. I frankly don't know why it didn't happen. We could have done, Shakti could have been done 30 years ago. We always had the talent, right? There's no lack of talent. Just circumstance didn't happen, that's all. Not blaming anybody. So we started it. So we decided on two things. The goals of Shakti were twofold. One was to create a cadre of processor architects. It was supposed to be an entity that would churn out processor architects for the country, because multiple people would be starting processor development teams, and you need the manpower for that. And processor architects are not easy to come by, right? So you need a specialized effort to do that. So that was one goal of Shakti. The second goal of Shakti was it was not designed to be a full-fledged research program. It was meant to be partly an open source program where we actually create open source processors that other people could look at, play around with it. So you needed an infrastructure for other people to start, right? So Shakti was meant to lay the foundation for both an Indian processor ecosystem and as a training base for future architects also. I mean, I helped created it, but I think it succeeded wildly in both of the things, because see, ultimately Indians now are confident that we can do our own processors, correct? So if we have achieved that, then Shakti has more than realized its goals. And in terms of return of investment for the government of India, very few programs match this kind of return.
Yes, of course. So it started as something that had a pedagogical value in the
Pedagogical value and to actually turn out open source examples. See, what was good about Shakti, and a lot of credit for that should go to Professor Kamakoti, is its scope was very well defined. We knew exactly what we wanted to do. We also know what we didn't want to do. We didn't want to do too much of theoretical research at that point, right? That has to come. Our feeling was, unless this base is there, you can't do theoretical research. Now you can do, right? Now that there is a Shakti base, people can take that and start doing the research projects on that. So think of Shakti as a research test bed also.
Of course. So I was listening to Professor Kamakoti. He said that Shakti spin out, including InCore, is like an ecosystem altogether. Yeah. Where he said that InCore is considered similar to the ARM of the ARM of Shakti. So do you agree with that characterization?
Yeah, we are very competitive with ARM in the embedded segment. If you go to so we currently have three ranges of processors. Two are shipping. One is called Azurite, which competes with ARM M0 to M3. The other one is Calcite, which is equivalent to ARM Cortex A5, A7, probably like a single core Cortex Cortex A35. We are very competitive with ARM in terms of performance, in terms of area. I mean, in some places we may be 2-3% less, in some places we may be 2-3% more. Other third-party companies have evaluated us against ARM, found us to be equivalent, if not slightly better, and selected. So we are on in some respects we are on par with ARM in the embedded segment.
And also you are working on something called an SoC generator. So can you walk us through it?
Yeah. So when InCore started, we started as a traditional processor IP company, right? Processor IP plus the fabric. A fabric is the SoC fabric that connects all the components together. But InCore, keeping with the Shakti lineage, also used a language called BlueSpec. So both our processor and our SoC fabric were built on what we call generator technology. That is, we don't have single cores or fabrics. We have a generator that can generate any configuration for you. So we are instantly customizable. But when we started working with customers, we realized that after we give the cores and the fabrics, the customers were still struggling to put the entire SoC together, going to design services company and all that. So we said, look, we'll create an internal tool initially to automate the creation of the digital portion of the SoC, right? That is up till the RTL generation. After that, the physical design is not our forte. I mean, InCore doesn't play in that area. We focus on what we are good at. So what started as an internal tool started getting used potentially by our customers, and it became an external tool. Now it has become a major tool for us. So essentially what SoCgen does is in 5 minutes, if you've got a block diagram, you can create an SoC and test it on an FPGA.
That really reduces the design time by a lot. Right? How much?
Yeah, so imagine your marketing comes to you and say that I got this idea for a chip, correct? And typically if you want to do, it takes you 2 months to get a proto out. Now 10-15 minutes you generate the proto, you start playing around with it, you can validate it. So it accelerates product design, right? So India is trying to become a product nation, and you need tools like this to accelerate product development.
So
yeah.
You are like a lingua franca between people who are designing the chip and the people who need to develop the IP behind. So is that the thing?
Yeah, in general, this is a problem in all of engineering because how shall I put it, right? Engineers like to create a lot of cool stuff, which is good. But the product designer doesn't care about the cool stuff. The product designer cares about the product, right? So this is like somebody gives you, you're a car designer and somebody gives you a gearbox, an engine, a chassis, suspension, tires, and say, build the car. And you're going to say, come on, put it together for me, right? Because you as a car designer want to see the full car quickly, right? I mean, it may not be a completely good analogy, but you're getting what I'm right. So, yes. So the creative person who wants to create a chip for a particular application quickly wants to put all the parts together, get a prototype, and try it out on the market. Whereas the current state of the industry is, yes, all the cool parts are there, but it's a humongous effort to put it all together.
So you spoke about InCore being a testbed for open source hardware and how it can be easily commercial, how it can be turned into a commercial endeavor. How do you see?
No, you got to be careful about open source, right?
Achha.
The RISC-V standard on which we are based is an open standard.
Open standard. Okay.
Open standard.
Is different from open source.
The Shakti processors that got developed at IIT Madras are open source. Okay, based on the Apache license. InCore's cores are distinct from the Shakti cores.
Achha.
They're different. Primarily because the Shakti cores, a lot of hardware may open source tends to be, has some other legal issues and all of that. But more importantly, we had to put our own little bit of secret sauce and all that. So InCore actually, the reason it took us so long to get commercial products out is we actually started developing a lot of cores from scratch. So the Shakti cores developed at IIT have a life of their own, right? They're open source cores. InCore's cores are proprietary cores. But while we call them proprietary, whenever somebody licenses the cores from us, we give the complete source code. So customers can modify the source to whatever they wanted to it, right?
So, how do you assess current chip design ecosystem in India? Like, what are your expectations from the upcoming wave of ISM? And specifically, they have been talking that the ISM 2.0 will be focusing on chip design and IP startups that are coming in India. So, how do you assess it?
That is where the focus should be, right? So people keep talking about fabs and OSATs and all of that. Look, you saw the recent American announcement came 2 3 days ago saying that 50% of all the chips should be manufactured in the US, right? For every $1 you import, $1 is local. A lot of other countries may start doing the same. So thinking that you can export your way out, I don't think is going to be feasible going forward. You have to look at a lot of local consumption, right? So for you to fill a fab with local products, you need to have the local products first. It's a chicken and egg problem, right? So unless local chip designs come to the market, you can't fill in the fabs with local designs. So you still need a few fabs, right? The Tata fabs. I hope that we get 2 3 more fabs, but we need a lot more local chip designs to fill in these fabs. The instant we start having local chips, I can assure you, you'll have demand for more and more fabs.
So, having a local fab is very much important for the chip design companies. Is that the case?
For a chip design company, no. Chip design company needs a local design ecosystem. See, even if a local fab is not there, I can still fabricate out of Taiwan or Singapore,
Okay.
right?
But is there a cost benefit if it is localized?
Not much, really. I'll tell you why. You do, I mean, there is import substitution. See, with respect to cost, when you put a cost, even a 65 nanometer fab is about $3 billion. Correct?
Mm.
So when you build a fab, that capex cost is there. That has to be amortized. So that cost has to be added to the manufacturing that the fab does. Whereas somebody like TSMC or UMCMC has amortized their cost 20 years ago for the older fabs. So which means the local fabs have to subsidize a little, or they have to take a bit of hit and all that. Once they go over a few years, then they will match. But it'll be very tough for an Indian fab to match a Taiwanese fab in price initially. Correct? But that is not the point. If you take a chip, 60-70% of the value comes from the design, IP, all of that. So that is where the value accrues. Look, the US does not have too many fabs, correct? It only has Intel. Micron has its own fabs. Texas Instrument has its own fabs. But other than that, it's only now TSMC, other people are building. But if you take NVIDIA, if you take Apple, if you take Broadcom, if you take AMD, they're all using Taiwan fabs and making tons and tons of money. Look at the market cap of NVIDIA. It does not own a fab. So what would you rather have? Somebody like NVIDIA in India first, or just a fab?
NVIDIA, of course, was
And it's my case.
creation. Oh,
Doesn't mean the fabs are not important, right? I'm saying it's only a matter of timing. I'm pretty sure my fab friends will call me after this podcast release saying why.
So,
all are important, okay? Nothing is less
right.
important or more important. It's a matter of priorities at any given point of time. That's all.
Do you think the location of InCore has also played a role? Right, I know that Tamil Nadu, the state government of Tamil Nadu is very much amenable with developing or deep tech ecosystems in the semiconductors.
Yeah.
So, do you think that makes sense for a new startup that to emerge in this space? Tamil Nadu is the place to.
Definitely. Well, I'm the advisor for guidance Tamil Nadu in this thing. Obviously, I'm going to say it's the best place in the country. I mean, everybody in the world is probably going to laugh at me if I say that, right? But I want Tamil Nadu to become the epicenter of the world's semiconductor thing, right? We have tons of people look in the Silicon Valley and stuff. Lots of people from here. If you look at Malaysia, OSAT, a lot of those OSAT engineers are from here. It's look, by no means I'm saying that Tamilians are better at this or some nonsense like that, right? But given the facts, the state's educational level, the number of colleges, IIT Madras being there, because of all the IITs, I think IIT Madras is probably the best deep tech. That came from the union government, correct? So the union government should also take credit for that. Our population demographics has also changed. So it's a lot of factors, some because of the government, some because Tamil Nadu just turned out to be lucky and all of that, right? So So nobody should take credit for it, but Tamil Nadu is in a happy place and we should leverage that. But having said that, I also advise other states in duplicating what we have here. I'm thoda sa partial to my state. That's all.
Is it duplicable? Like what happens in Tamil Nadu? Do you think that the same can be applied to any other state, like say Karnataka?
Well, Karnataka should have been on par with Tamil Nadu, if not more. I don't know what happened over there. See, it's tough to say. You should know how each state is governed. Okay, in Tamil Nadu, the individual ministries have a lot more power than other states, so decision making is faster.
That makes
So,
sense.
right from the beginning, my grandfather used to be in the ministry way back in the 20s and stuff, right? Right from then, the way it's structured is the secretaries and stuff have a lot more authority in the state. That is the political culture of the state, correct? They have been given power, so a lot more decisions are taken. See, have you heard about TIDCO, Tamil Nadu Industrial Development Corporation? So TIDCO is a government industrial development company. Do you know they're the largest shareholder of Titan? They own even more of a shareholder stake in Titan than the Tatas.
I didn't know.
Yeah. So for the past like 30 years, TIDCO has been in the business of private equity and venture investing and making lots of money very successfully.
Okay. This is new to me. Nice.
Okay. So a lot of companies in the Tamil Nadu actually actively venture invests in companies, takes a stake and all of that, right? That is because of the freedom given to the bureaucracy,
The local government,
the local governance and all of that, right? So it is an interesting governmental structure. Somebody needs to do a study as to how this came about in Tamil Nadu.
Of course.
So, but here we are today, so that actually helps. So it's not that the government bureaucrats in other states are less capable. They're just more empowered here. So if people need to copy the Tamil Nadu model, they should look at empowering their industry secretaries and IT secretaries a lot more.
So the ecosystem incentivizes this industry.
Precisely, right. A lot of other factors also, right? Tamil Nadu, because of its demographics and a more urbanized state, is also more industrialized. It's a lot of factors. Like I said, people shouldn't go around taking credit for we did this and all of that, right? So Tamil Nadu is an interesting case study. So it's a variety of factors that resulted in a happy situation for Tamil Nadu.
So going to the open source hardware,
yeah,
that is how I see Shakti, at least. Once it comes into the commercial side of it, things might change. But completely talking from an academic perspective, do you think that there should be any policy support to developing open source hardware ecosystem in India? Like, this is just a thought experiment. I don't know if this will work out or not. But
I think so. So if you look at the pulp experiment in ETH Zurich, if you have time, take a look at it. That is a Shakti-like effort out of Zurich, ETH in Switzerland. Very successful. They have far more IP than us because they've invested a lot more resources and they're getting to be commercial grade performance also, right? So over a period of time, I think open source hardware will take over, especially in the embedded segment. But that's probably the wrong question to ask, because if you're developing an SoC and you took an open source chip, open source IP, say instead of taking InCore, you took somebody else's IP, you still have to maintain it, bug fix and all of that. What you will find is the cost of support and the cost of buying the IP are pretty much the same. See, Linux is open source. Agree? So Red Hat Linux, which everybody uses, is based on open source Linux. But you still pay money for it. It actually can be more expensive than buying Microsoft Windows Server. So open source can actually end up being more expensive than proprietary also in some cases.
But why is that so much academic fascination towards open source?
Because the importance of open source is not cost reduction. It is to prevent lock-in. So if Red Hat does not give you a particular feature, you can switch over to SUSE Linux with that feature. So it keeps Red Hat honest. So open source doesn't necessarily mean a cheap product. It means a product that you're not locked into. It gives you freedom. So that is the philosophical basis of open source. It is a freedom to do a lot of things. And hardware is even tougher, correct? So for example, when we sell a core, I have to validate the core. I have to test it out on silicon. It costs a lot of money. So unlike software where you can write on a PC and check it out, to prove silicon is tons and tons of money. So if there is an open source core, somebody has got to spend that money. So open source doesn't necessarily mean cheaper. It gives flexibility. RISC-V, so that is why open source in hardware is not taken off as much as open source is taken off in software. But I think open source will take off in peripherals like Ethernet controllers, USB controllers, and all of that, right? The digital portion and all that. I think there'll be a good blend of proprietary and
open hardware.
Open hardware.
So this is again a policy experiment that I and some of my colleagues were lurking around. Is it possible that we can say Tata PSMC or the newly modernized SCL to open source one of their PDKs and integrate it with an open source EDA tool to make it more democratic?
Well, as part of Shakti, we did that. Professor Kamakoti actually tried to get that going. That needs a policy initiative from the government. So we've been actively trying to promote this of trying to have a open source flow for the older nodes. Definitely feasible, and it will help a lot. See, especially the older nodes like 130 nanometer, 180 nanometer, 90 nanometer, 65 nanometer. There are companies like, I think there's one effort that kind of went bankrupt. I think it's restarted. So there are some efforts in there. I think up to 40 nanometers, the open source flows stand a good chance.
So that really takes care of the most of the like I want to understand that when you talk about peripherals, what node are we talking about?
See, India basically needs to focus on 180 to 40 nanometer. Little bit of 28, but our focus should be 180 to 40.
So why the fab is at 28 nanometer? Is that a logic?
No, it goes up to 28. The current fab they'll tape out, I think it'll be 50 or something, then they'll come to 40. 28 is still being developed. The fab will be capable, right? It all depends on what the product mix will be. See, if you take electricity meter, which sells in the millions, if you take fan controllers, if you take BLDC motors controllers, right? If you take smart cards, all of which will go in tens, if not hundreds of millions, they're all in the 90, 65, 40 nanometer node.
So this is a volume business, that is what.
Most of the world's chips are shipped in the older nodes. The glamour is in the larger nodes, but the
market is also there in the older nodes. Right?
Yeah, I mean, profit might be less, margin might be less, but the volumes are there. So if you're going to talk about Atmanirbharta, I mean, don't go to a supercomputer here. Start with a fan. Let's say that every component of a fan should be manufactured in India. That means resistor, capacitor, PCB, control chip, memory, everything, correct? So start small, start with the smaller items which are easier to do, then move your way up. You got to crawl first before you can walk, and then you can run.
So Neil Gala, your CTO, I followed him on Semicon 2025. He said something really interesting on the stage that the world needed a reliable Toyota.
Yeah.
But we were running towards getting a Ferrari. So
yeah.
Is that what is going on in India? The fascination with the cutting edge number?
No, that was there. The joke I gave is, I think one of my nephews, when he wanted to get married, he wanted to marry his favorite film star. And I said, you don't even live in the same universe. I mean, she may be a good person, but you got to like her, she got to like you and all that. I mean, it's sustainable, right? So I think there's a bit of glamour attraction initially. We talked about 7 nanometers and all of that. Don't get me wrong, we need it. But look, I'm a country with limited resources, right? So I need to pick my challenges. Like I said, doing a 7 nanometer fab or a 2 nanometer fab is not wrong. If you give me a 2 nanometer fab today, I would love to design chips for that. But I have to face realities in terms of funding the country's requirements. So we need to prioritize. That's all.
So, coming to the capital and the risk that is associated with the semiconductor companies. So, the VC ecosystem in India has been a bit hesitant on semiconductor design. Is that the case? Or how is it evolving? What is going on in the
It is evolving. Look, see, everybody talks about the Silicon Valley ecosystem. People forget how many years it took to evolve there. Here, semiconductor companies have started coming in only in the past couple of years, right? Suddenly, how do you expect the VCs to get confidence? I mean, they need to see track record, what plays out and all that. You can't blame them. After all, the people who put money into the VC funds have earned it the hard way.
Continue.
No, for some reason, we think that just because you think you have a great idea, the VC should completely believe you and dump money into you. They are answerable to their investors. And so nothing wrong with caution. This is not the time we should be blaming people. I say that constantly because new industry, everybody is confused. That's okay. Give it a year or two more. For VCs also to become confident, they need to see a few companies succeed, to see what kind of exit those companies get, whether they go IPO, they get bought out, right, or they merge with other companies. Once that is clear, then you will get more and more investment coming in.
Again, is there a role that government can play, like give some procurement contracts to the local firms?
It doesn't have to forcibly procure. No, definitely. So we've been what has been missing is government mandates. That would definitely help. And we have been advocating for government mandates and things like electricity meters, fan controllers, and all of that. The government also realizes that. I'll tell you what problem they have. And they actually created a mandate 5-8 years ago. But when they did the mandate, local parts are not available. So then the product manufacturer said, hey, you're asking us to procure locally, but the chips are not available. See, currently, Chinese IP camera chips are not allowed in India. So all the IP camera vendors have started trying to procure local chips, but the local chips are not available. Correct? IP camera vendors need to ship products today. If you go to a shop and want to buy an IP camera chip, you won't agree if it tells you, sir, come after 2 years, then we'll put an Indian chip and give you, right? I mean, you got a security problem in your house or office and you want a camera today. So what will the IP camera vendor do for the next 2 years? So the government putting a mandate is very easy, but it also needs to accelerate development of local chips. So as I keep pointing out, right, timing is everything. You got to sequence things properly. Otherwise, things could go haywire.
So again, is it hard to run a deep tech in a deep tech startup in?
Everybody keeps asking me that question. I've been running deep tech companies for about 30 years now, so I'm the wrong person to ask that. It's like running any company. It has its challenges, but running any company, even running a rice mill, would have its challenges.
Like what I'm trying to say is that in most of the businesses, the markets are too much sorted for it. But when it comes to deep tech, you have to create the market from the scratch.
That is there, but when Hyundai created Creta in the market and created an SUV market, tried an established company, right? So,
but the car market already existed for them. There was something called a car for them to consume.
Well, yes and no. We manufacture what, 150 mobile phones a year, something like that, between 120 to 150 million. So the component market exists. So I have a ready market. In fact, I have a much better market than the car market. Look at how many fans we buy. Look at how many ACs we buy, how many refrigerators we buy, right? How many cars we buy, how many bikes we buy, how many mobile phones we buy, how many laptops we buy. Our market is huge. So It's a matter of convincing the EMS manufacturers to buy the local chips.
Right.
Look, I'm not saying it's easy, but I don't want to get portrayed as some very special guys and stuff, right? Because I'll tell you why. I want to encourage more young CEOs to come into semiconductor deep tech. I don't want to scare them. I want to tell them it is hard, but running any business is hard. But
Of
if you
course.
put in the hard work, and you can get advice from people like me, any kid who wants to be a CEO, if he's got the right mind, knows how to pick the market well, can succeed. I don't want to scare people away by saying it's deep tech, it is something special, don't come, only specialized people. That's nonsense. Look, it's hard business, right? It's not an easy business. And deep tech always takes time. The thing that is difficult about deep tech is that the time periods are very long, unlike other businesses.
So I was reading through what China is doing in open source hardware, and there is something that came up. There is something called BOSC that Chinese Academy of Sciences have developed, and the role of BOSC is just to commercialize open source stuff. Like
Yeah.
they help in developing the open source hardware, and they help the startups who are within their network to commercialize it. So, do you think India can replicate something like that? Is that a
We did.
good
I mean,
policy advice?
I think we should. Shakti started that way. So very interestingly, when the Chinese Academy of Sciences started all of this, they invited me to give a lecture on how to do it.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so 2019, I was invited to CASH and I gave a talk. I was supposed to give a talk in Wuhan and then in Beijing. I couldn't make it to Wuhan due to some flight scheduling problems. So I gave two talks in Beijing. It was at a nascent stage. So in 2019, India was actually ahead of China in the RISC-V open source game by 5 years. And in my only advice, government of India should invest more in Professor Kamakoti's lab and also help other design companies and stuff. See, we have the infrastructure, we have what it takes, and we just need to pump in more money.
So, how do channelize that money here?
Well, there is an ISM and all that. I think enough conversations are happening. See, MeitY is doing an excellent job. It knows what to do. But unless funds get allocated to MeitY, what will they do?
So maybe the problem is in the centralization of the flow of
like I said, my standard mantra is I don't go around blaming people here. It's pointless. The country has got many priorities and stuff. So, well, MeitY can ask finance ministry. 20 other ministries will also ask for funds. There's no easy answer to this thing, right? It's very easy to sit in a podcast and blame this person, blame that person, all that. Till you are in charge of the country's finances, and then 20 million people are asking you for funds for 40 million projects, and you got to figure out who to give what.
So for government, I think the priority is that they want to put money where the highest amount of ROI is.
Oh, the ROI is not easy to figure out. It's very easy to say that where you put money, where the ROI is, right? So, for example, take today's news, right? GTRE is asked for about, I think, about 2,500 crores or 1,000, something like that, for enhancing the test bed for the Kaveri test beds and so on, right? So, the biggest problem India has got in engine development is we don't have local testing facilities. We have to go to Russia, turnaround time is so much. And they need about 500 crores for annual maintenance of that test facility, right? So about 2,000, 2,500 crores, something like that, plus 500, right? And I think their complaint was that MOD has just given them 700 crores. But MOD also has got 20 priorities. We have got a hostile border, equipment has to be purchased. So how much you put in R&D, how much you put in equipment purchase. You can say Atmanirbharta, but we got a hot border. So I need equipment on the border today, right? So as I said, very easy to blame, very easy to criticize till you are put in the hot seat. Right? So
I see, I have a wave of optimism when I'm talking to you. You are always optimistic about everything.
No, things always happen here. People get too worried about it, right? Look, my standard example I give is my family history goes back at least about 1,000 years. So my ancestor actually taught Ramanuja the Vedas, and then he became one of the acharyas. So we have seen all the Muslim kings. Then you have seen the British thing. Some of my ancestors, I think, were butchered in the Srirangam temple. But the family doesn't carry any emotional baggage. Jo ho gaya, so ho gaya. That's all, right? Forget about it, move on. So things happen.
Resilience.
Huh?
You are resilient.
Extremely resilient. We don't bother. We're very stoic. So whatever the universe throws at you, just absorb it and keep going.
You guys are right to run the semiconductor company.
No. Why do you think TSMC succeeded? Maurice Chang is resilient to the nth degree. Why do you think NVIDIA succeeded? Because the CEO is resilient to the core. Why do you think AMD succeeded? The CEO there also, right? Ultimately, resilience wins. You just got to keep focused. It's 99% hard work, right? I don't want to over glamorize it, right? You just put your head down, keep focusing on it. What is the point worrying about things that you don't control? US policy change today, it may change tomorrow. China may do X, Y. I don't control those things. What do I gain worrying about it? I will worry about things that I can control, correct? So there's no point wasting energy thinking about this may happen, that may happen. Whatever happens, deal with it. That's all.
So I wanted to ask you more about how Rice Lab is playing a role in developing semiconductor strategy. A little bit of history of what it does and how it works.
Well, look, I can only talk about a small portion of Rice Lab. Rice Lab is a huge lab with lots of work. Okay, so I was involved in the Shakti effort of the Rice Lab. So Professor Kamakoti has been working on processes and related stuff way back in the early 2000s also, more than at least a decade before I came and before that, right? So Rice Lab has been playing on all aspects of semiconductor design, including some of the design tool methodology, of course, on software, on processor design when I came. There's also security lab, which is a separate lab now. So it's a fairly large lab. It has been, and Rice Lab also encouraged other people to come in, collaborative work. So it was and continues to be a nice open lab, right? So it's the culture of the lab that makes it what it is, right? Culture is very important in an R&D lab. If an R&D lab is collaborative, welcomes outside collaboration, does not have too much of an ego, and the focus is just on sharing and creating knowledge, then that lab always succeeds.
So for a young engineer who is debating right now whether to get into the deep tech entrepreneurship or to take an industry job, what would you say to such a person?
I think that is a wrong question to ask. Whether you become an engineer or you start your own company, you need to understand the industry, you need to have technical skills. So you need to develop those first. Right? See, the biggest problem in a fabulous semiconductor company is actually a go-to-market strategy. Because most companies would be focusing on the commodity market. It's kind of tough to do a very high-end NVIDIA-like chip in India. So most people would be focusing on chips costing anywhere between 50 cents to $2, $3. That by definition is a commodity market, which means you're going to be ultra competitive. So if you want to do a startup, you better figure out why your chip is going to succeed in the market. You can't be dramatically different. If you think you're going to create something unique that other people have not done, you're sadly mistaken. There are 7 billion plus people on the planet. And my standard thing is, if you come up with a bright idea, I'm pretty sure 20 companies would have implemented that idea and already making money out of it, right? It's very tough to come with an original idea in the world. There's just too many people. There are too many smart people in the world. But given your local circumstance, you can create products which are differentiated. So you need to understand the market. You need to have a bit of empathy. Too many techies think, hey, my technology is great, it'll sell. No, it doesn't matter. What matters is what a customer thinks, right? So you need to reach out to potential customers, understand their pain points, and think. What I would advise young entrepreneurs is not to make the blunder that I did for nearly 20 years of my life. The blunder is that uh, you think that you need a great, highly differentiated, unique product to succeed in. And if you can't think of that, you tell yourself that your product won't succeed and you give up, right? So some of the startups that I tried, they would have succeeded if I'd persevered more, but my thinking was wrong in the sense that there is nothing wrong with a Me Too product. A Me Too product implemented well, supported well, will often succeed better than the product it was copied from. I mean,
Right.
don't go violating any IP laws when you. I mean, I'm talking about similar product, so please don't do that. And never ever break the law. But if you're going to do a product which is similar to somebody else has, absolutely nothing wrong with it. But you need to ask yourself, why will a customer buy my chip over the competing chip? If you think you have got a good answer, go for it.
So again, what is the key downstream market that any semiconductor fabless or design IP companies trying to tap into it?
The biggest market in India is, I think, the industrial, embedded, and automotive segment. That is where a lot of the chips are going, and to some degree, the consumer electronics.
So, like, what is their outlook like? Is it
No,
because of the cost? Cost is a factor, value is a factor. I'm trying to understand that why they are focusing on that specifically.
no, that is where the market is. I mean, you're simply looking at what people are buying, correct? I mean, just look around you in the room.
So, like, is it a natural demand? The natural demand is focused on this industry.
See, you always look at where the demand is and do for that, right? I mean, we are in a podcast, correct? So, in our podcast, what are the electron chips that you see in front of you? You got a microphone. So, microphone has got a to D converter, and it's got a digital chip. And if it's USB, you'll have a USB chip. If it's Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, it'll have a RF chip, right? So there itself, you're talking about 3 separate chips or on one integrated chip, or at least 2 integrated chips, right? Both of us are wearing headphones. And if it's a wireless headphone, again, Bluetooth, noise cancelling DSP, there are 2 to 3 chips there itself, right? And then
Right.
the PC in front of you, the camera in front of you, which has got a IP camera chip. So our conversation, if you look around itself, is about 10 chips at least. And everybody doing a podcast in India is using these 10 chips. So don't you think there is a demand? See, people need to learn to do product breakdowns. You'll find that we consume an amazing amount of chips in this country. I mean, an SUV like a Mahindra or a Tata probably has got anywhere from 100 to 120, 170 processors. It's getting merged now. They're doing something called a zone controller, where instead of having too many chips, they have a single chip. Which can kind of be virtually partitioned, but still the number of chips that go into a car is enormous. Your tire pressure monitoring system, right? Every wheel has to have one. How many cars and two-wheelers do we sell in this country? Quite a lot. So demand is there. Do you have to compete with existing vendors? Yeah, it's not. Nobody said it's an easy business.
Okay. That is what businesses are about. To compete.
You can't have a business without a competition. Yeah, that's not possible.
So for an Indian startup working in this space, what is the export market that they should look into, or the domestic demand is enough to run an IP company?
I think they should look at domestic demand initially, but export market, I think you need to get into specialized markets if you get into export. Otherwise, you'll hit the Taiwanese and other people head on, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So export market, there are certain segments where prices are still high in the world, and they can look at that. So anything RF signal conditioning related is still higher in price outside. They can look at that. If you're selling IP, what's called a SerDes. SerDes is basically the analog portion of high-speed interfaces like Ethernet, USB, and PCI Express. Those IPs are very expensive outside. So Indian companies should get into that. Actually, anything analog, RF, MEMS related has some scope outside, especially analog and RF.
So, Madhu, thank you very much for doing this.
Sure.
I look forward to hosting you again for another such podcast.
Yep.
Thank you very much.